Welcome to this video. I got a new React course, and this video is not about the React course. But if you saw some of the announcements, you probably saw that in this React course, we built an application where we can build up a burger dynamically. Now that burger is actually not using a bunch of images for the different ingredients, but is written entirely in CSS. This is written entirely in CSS. In this video, we'll build this burger together. So let's dive in. So I want to build this burger here, and it's written, as I said, entirely in CSS. We won't animate it, we won't add JavaScript logic to build it up. That is what we do with React and the React course. But it is, I guess, interesting to see how you can use CSS to create all these ingredients here. So for that, let's create a new pen here on CodePen, which is the web editor I'm going to use. You could build this locally, but here this is a nice playing ground for exactly this kind of project, so why don't we use it? So in this new CodePen here, I want to build the burger. Now this burger, as I said, won't use JavaScript, but it will use HTML and it will use CSS obviously to, well, make the burger look like a burger. In HTML, I will not have that many elements. I will have a wrapping div, which I will give the class box. And this will just be like the container for the burger. And then in there, I want to have a div for each ingredient. So the goal is to have something like bread top maybe. And then also have something like salad and then bread bottom. And we're going to add more ingredients than just these three. This wouldn't be that delicious of a burger. But that is the idea, having all these ingredients sit next to each other and styling them with CSS. So this is our HTML code. How does the CSS code look like then? Well, I'm going to create all these classes I'm using here. And I'll start with the box, which is the most boring one because it's not an ingredient. This box should just be the container for the burger, and the burger then also should be built in a way that it's really flexible and grows with the box. So therefore, to start off, I'll give this box a width of, let's say, 500 pixels and a margin of auto to just center it and a height of 450 pixels. And you can always adjust this later. Now let's work on the bread top. Since this is the first element I got here on the left. And now the bread top should be, well, a box with round corners on the top left and right corner. So that we have a straight line at the bottom and clear edges on the sides, on the bottom edges. But then on the bottom corners. But then this rounded look at the top. Like a burger bread you cut into pieces where you then will take the upper piece. In CSS, we obviously always work with boxes. And all these ingredients are nothing else than boxes with some rounded edges, some round corners from time to time. So, first of all, let's give this bread top a height. And let's say this should be 20%. Keep in mind, it's inside the box, so it will be 20% of that height here. Let's also give it a width. And let's say that should be 80%. And we can always tweak this later. Now we want to have a background color for this bread top. So I'll assign background color, and of course we can make this red so that we now see this box. Red doesn't seem to be the most optimal color for bread though. A brown probably would be better, but I actually want to use a linear gradient to give this also some three-dimensional look so that we don't have the same monotone color for the entire bread. And if we want to use linear gradient, we can't do this on background color because it's not treated as a color. We do it on the background property instead. Now linear gradient takes all the different shades you want to, well, transition through. And here I only want to have two, and I picked two brownish colors. The first one, the hash code for the hex code for the first one is BC581E, and the second color I want to transition to is E27B36, like this. So this is the brown color I picked, and of course you can always pick a different one. Now here we got the look, but of course we're missing the round corners and so on, right? So we should probably add some border radius to this. And now we could say 10 pixels. This gives us round corners everywhere. We only want to have the top and the top two corners to be round though. So what we can do is we can say 10 pixels, 0, 0. The first two numbers, or basically these numbers go from top left to top right to bottom left. So one time around the burger. If we do it like this, only the top corners are round, but 10 pixels isn't enough. Actually, I'm going to use percentages here. So we can use 50% here. 50% basically looks much closer to a burger, a bread, a cut up bread look as I wanted. Now in this bread almost already looks pretty good, but now I also want to give it some three-dimensional look. So I'll add a box shadow, but not one which goes outside of the bread, but an inset shadow, so which falls onto the bread, so to say. Then I'll use 15 pixels and 0 here as dimensions for this shadow. And this black shadow actually doesn't look too bad, but I want to have some dark brown color here, which I can get with C15711. And this now looks really good for me at least. And as always, you can tweak this around. Now with that, we got the bread top finished for now. All these seeds on the bread are missing for now. We'll add them later. Let's next work on the salad. Now, how should the salad look like? How should the salad be styled? For the salad, let's first of all define a width. And the bread top had a width of 80%. I think it would look nice if the salad is a little bit broader than the bread. So maybe we take 90% here. We also have to assign a height. And there, let's try 7%. So much smaller than the bread, because salad obviously isn't as big. Now, the next step is I want to give this a background color. And here again, I'm going to use a linear gradient to have this nicer look than just one single color. And there I picked some green colors in advance. 228 C1D is the code of the first color, the color where we're starting at. And then I want to end at hashtag 91CE50. This is now a green color. It also is not positioned correctly. For one, we want to use margin auto to center it. The same should of course then be done on the bread on the top. Here we also should center this. Now it's centered, but it also doesn't have any space between the bread and the salad. So we probably want to add some spacing, maybe 2% of the total height of the box to the bread. And maybe add the same amount of spacing to the salad. And as so often, you can also fine-tune this, of course. So this is now the style I want to use. One thing's missing. I don't like the edges here, the corners of the salad. So it makes sense to also give that a border radius of, let's say, 20 pixels. And you can just play around with this number until it looks good to you. I like this look. You can, of course, choose a different one. So now we got the salad finished. Let's now work on the bottom bread. So I'll add bread bottom here to target this last div. And on this bread, I'll also assign a height. Let's pick 13%, so that's smaller than the top bread, but we also won't have this round part on the top here. And let's pick a width which probably should be equal to the width of the top bread. So 80% was our width there. Let's go with the same width on the bottom bread. Now, so that we can see something, I'll also use a background here. And I also want to set the background to a linear gradient here. And I will use the following color, F08 E4A, and then go to E27 B36. And I simply picked all these colors in some color pickers before I started recording this. Now we got the background color for that. Let's also add a margin of 2%, 2% in auto here to center this and have some spacing. And let's also add this inset box shadow as we use it on the top bread. So inset minus 15 pixels, 0, and then C15711, so that we get the same look as we have on the top. Some border radius can't hurt here too though. A little bit too edgy for my taste. So I'll add a border radius, but I won't use as round of a corner as we did for the top bread. Instead, the top two corners shouldn't be round at all, so I'll assign a value of 0. But I want to have round corners at the bottom, so I'll use 30 pixels here. And I like this look. Of course, you can have or make them a little bit less round with 20 maybe. Also looks good. Whatever you like. I'll go back to 30, but again, you can tweak this to your needs. And with that, we got our bottom bread style too. This already looks nice in my opinion, but we haven't gotten that many ingredients, so time to add more. One great thing we can already see though is if I simply duplicate the salad div here, well, we got 2 salads in there. So that really works great, it's reusable. Still, let's add more ingredients. Let's add bacon below the salad. Let's add cheese. Let's maybe start with 2 slices of cheese. And let's add meat here, maybe also 2 slices. These are all the ingredients I want to support and, well, build here. Now let's add them step by step. Let's start with the bacon. And I'm going to add this class right below the salad. So the bacon also, of course, has to have a width. And here I'll use 80% to have it as width as the bread. You can make it smaller, you can make it bigger, whatever you want. The height should be really small because bacon isn't that fat, at least not from a height perspective. And we also want to assign a background here. And as always, I'll use a linear gradient here too to have nicer colors. The linear gradient here should go from BF3813 to C45E38, like that. And let's also add our margin of 2% and auto to center it. That's my bacon. Now here, I don't actually have round corners. You could add them. You could add rounded corners here. But I like my bacon to have rough edges, rough corners like it has here. Again, as always, change this if you want a different look. Let me move on to the cheese. And you probably already understood the pattern. We can copy the code from the bacon here and just adjust these values. For example, I want to have cheese which overlaps or which goes beyond the width of my bread. So I'll pick, let's say, 91% here. The height of the cheese could be 3%, but let's make it slightly bigger, maybe 4.5. And the color, of course, is off. It should be in the yellowish region. So there I'll pick F4D004 and then D6BB22. And obviously I know all these hex codes by heart. You simply look them up and pick a color you like. So that's our background. Now for the cheese, I want to have round corners again. So I'll add a border radius here. And I'll simply set 20 pixels for all corners. This looks nice to me, looks like nice cheese. As always, you can tweak it, but I like the look of these cheese pieces here. And that already is the cheese. Now, of course, that's not all though. We also get the meat. So I'll duplicate the cheese because meat also will need width and height and so on. So let me name this meat here. Now let's think about the width. I'll go with maybe 78%, slightly smaller than the bread. I'll give it a height of, let's say, 8% to have a bit bigger slices of meat. The background here, again, will be a linear gradient. And here I want to go from 7F3608 to 702E05 for this look of my bread. The border radius, maybe a little bit less round, maybe 15 pixels. Looks nice to me. And I think the width should be a little bit bigger, maybe 82%. Yeah, that looks better. And with that, I'm happy with the look of my meat. It looks good to me. I got my meat here, looks fine. So as you can see, we basically have a lot of similar properties in all these ingredients, and we just assign different values for them. But besides that, all ingredients work in the same way. What we can also already see is, if I go up to my box and I decrease this to 300 pixels, it all adjusts. Of course, the burger can look a bit skewed depending on how you set the aspect ratio here, but in general, it adjusts nicely. So that is really good. I'll go back to what I used before though. Now, this is the burger in general, but the seeds on the top bread are missing. And the seeds are actually a bit more work to have them look good. So the seeds will be wrapped elements in this bread top div. I'll add a seeds element and a seeds to element. So two divs with these two different classes. Now, the reason for this is that I, of course, want to have more than one seed. And I will take advantage of a CSS feature to actually convert each div here into up to 3 seeds if I want to, but I can't go above these 3 seeds easily. So I'll use this approach. And here, how do we make this work? I will add my seeds class here below bread top to start working with that. I want to position it inside the bread top, and I want to be able to use this like a absolute viewport. So I want to use position absolute here to really display or position these seeds as I want. Now for absolute, referring to my outer div, I need to give my bread top class the position relative. Then the next absolute position will refer to this. Now we can start working on the seeds. I'll give them a width of 10%, and this will now refer to the width of the bread top, not to the box width. And I'll give my seed, let's say, a height of 15%. Now I also need to give them some color, and here I will simply use white as a background color. With that, we don't see the seed yet, because I also need to position it. I do this with left and top. Now I'll try left 30% and top 50%. And now we see the seed appear here. 30% into the burger and 50% from the top. Now, of course, my seed also should have round corners. So I'll give it a border radius of 40% to not have an entire ellipse, but some edges, but overall very round corners. Now, the next thing is I want to rotate it a little bit. So I'll use the transform property and then rotate the rotate function. And let's say by minus 20 degrees so that it's not sitting in parallel on the burger. And finally, I'll also give it a box shadow, an inset shadow, minus 2 pixels, minus 3 pixels, and then let's say C9, 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 which is like a grayish shadow. I like this look here. And you can always tweak these values to reposition the shadow. So that's my first seed, but I want to have more than one. And now I'm going to use a little, trick, but not really a trick. I'm using a pseudo selector. I'm taking the seeds class I just worked on, and I'll add the after pseudo selector. And this allows me to create a new element which is displayed after this seed element. The content should be an empty string. This is required to display something though. And then I'll give it a width of 100% because this will now refer to the seeds class. So to this width. So not 100% of the bread top, but 100% of the width of this seed. And it should be equally sized, therefore 100%. Now height also will be 100% then. So I'll add it like this. And now let's also give this a position of absolute. Let's give it a background color of white. And let's give it a left position. And now this also refers to the other seed. So I'll use minus 170% to move it to the left, 170% of the width of that previous seed. And let's move it to the top by minus 260%. This will move it up by 2.6 times the height of this seed. Now, all I need to do is give this the round corners we already used, so 40%. And I want to rotate this differently. So now I'll transform this. And if I now do rotate 0 degrees, it won't change, because now the default rotation is the rotation of the element I positioned it after, so of these seeds. So now if I wanted to make this, well, convert this back to be in parallel to my bread top, I would have to rotate it by 20 degrees. So if I do that, it's back to a straight element, a straight line. I want to rotate it by 60 degrees though, so to have it rotate in the opposite direction essentially. And then I'm going to add a box shadow here. Also with inset, 1 pixel, 2 pixels, and then C9, C9, C9. Like this. So this is the second seed I wanted to add. Now I'll add a third one. And for that, I'm going to copy these seeds after element here, paste it in, and change after to the other pseudo selector before. Now I can also do the same and create another seed visually. So all the setup up here is the same. The position changes though. I want to move this to the right. So let's use 180%. And then I want to not push this up as high, so I'll use minus 50% to move it up. Then all the rest, however, stays the same. I'll just adjust the box shadow to come from an opposite direction with minus 3 pixels. Now it's coming from the bottom, from the bottom left. And with that, that seed also looks good to me. Now we can work on the next seed. Seeds 2, because I only have after and before, so I'll need my new element, seeds 2. And seeds 2, of course, just is styled as the other seed without a pseudo selector was. So I'm going to copy the code from there and paste it into seeds 2 like this. And now let's see what we have to adjust. Position absolute, width and height, that's all great. The positioning here has to change. I'm going to push this farther to the right with a distance to the left of 64%. And I'll leave top to 50%, set to 50% though. I'll leave the border radius, but I want to rotate it differently. Let's say plus 10 degree to have a slight rotation to the right. And adjust the box shadow, minus 3 pixels, then maybe 0 and the same color as before. Now with that, we got this seed in place. Now I'll use seeds after again. So let me copy seeds 2 here. Use the after pseudo selector. Width, as you learned, as height should be 100%. Now the position has to change though. First of all, let me add some content, however, so that we can see something. And now let's move it farther to the right. Maybe by pushing this 150% to the right, away from left. And for top, let me use minus 130% to move it up a little bit. Border radius is fine, but let me rotate it by 90 degrees to really have it be rotated totally different. And I'll adjust the shadow to use 1 pixel, 3 pixels here to come from the right like this. Now with that, I got this seed in place, and I'd say this looks like a nice burger. This is the burger we built in the React app, in the burger builder in this React course. And I hope you enjoyed learning how you can build elements like this with just CSS. This doesn't use SVG, doesn't use any images, nothing like that. It's just CSS. And as you saw, not even that many CSS properties we're using. So really, I hope you liked this kind of video. I hope this was helpful and hopefully see you in future videos too. You can of course find this code attached to this video. Bye.